atomic gigantification was a sweeping Japan nation when along came a dude with an ultra attitude, a Kamen Rider who's the greatest kicker of Japan. And of all, man, life's too short now, baby, to not talk big now, baby.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Kaiju Conversation. I'm your host, Elijah, and joining me, as always, my lovely but sometimes rude co-host.
Hey! Hello, I am Rex.
Well, I was going to say, and editor, but you interrupted me.
Well, hey, I just couldn't put up with the insult there.
For the people who are listening.
There's no truth behind it.
I was being harassed before you heard this.
No.
It's true. Don't believe what he's saying.
Over-exaggerating.
Well, before you rudely interrupted me again, but we are back at it again for the fourth and final Minoru Kawasaki Month episode.
Ooh.
Not only for the
one.
year, yeah, but in general. Like, this is our last movie. But before we do that, we do have some typical housekeeping we got to do.
Of course.
Rex, how have you been?
Pretty good. Been surprisingly busy today, trying to get a 3D printer to work and dealing with Australian Wi-Fi, my public enemy number one, as far as I'm concerned. But, you know, I'm getting there. I have Wi-Fi at the moment, so we can record, so that's great.
That's amazing, actually. I don't know what I could do if you didn't have Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I know, right? You couldn't do anything.
We would do it on your phone with your mobile data.
Oh God, at that point you'd just be hearing static.
I mean, I already hear static, but we tend to ignore that.
So how about yourself?
Wow, nothing. Okay. Well, you know, I have not been, surprisingly, but I have been very, very, very busy. I guess I can talk about literally everything now. It's all been announced. So I'm working on Liverleaf, a Blu-ray from SRS Cinema. By the time this episode goes live, my stuff's done and sent off, hopefully.
Nice.
So I've got that working. I'm doing that right now. We are about to start production on my short film for G-Fest.
Mm-hmm.
I printed off all the scripts, got the names, highlighted everything for all the actors, and I'm starting to disperse it. Actually, as of this recording, a lot of that's probably going to get dispersed today.
Nice.
I'm going to get that to everybody and call it good. So then they'll be reading that. We start filming here in actually it's 2 weeks exactly. I am waiting on some props to be sent to me, and then we're going to get going. So that's pretty exciting. So I've been bouncing back and forth from doing calls about my props and working on getting the script out and getting it out and working on Liverleaf. And on top of all of that, recently announced was War of the Ninja Monsters, Jaron versus Gora, which I am starting early development on producing the bonus features for that. Funny enough, Sci-Fi Japan ran the press release for that, and my name was in that. That was really weird. I will not get used to that at all, ever. And then Kaiju United... this is breaking news as of this recording, is going to be the official sponsor and press for G-Fest. And I'm going to be slightly involved in that for G-Fest next year. Not next year,
Nice.
This year. So I got a lot going on. So, you know, these, on top of all that, you know, we've got the Kaiju Conversation that we do currently weekly that I'm also doing. So I did that, which all of this to say, I've been extremely busy. I've also just been working my normal job. I ended up pulling 55 hours this last week. So that's 15 hours overtime. And So I've got a lot. I've been doing a lot, which segues into my statement. I have not watched any tokusatsu. So before you ask me, nothing, zilch, nada. Like I haven't
not even a single episode of Ultraman 80.
No, I haven't had time. Like my schedule is I
Just
get up.
Watch one while we're recording.
that doesn't work. My schedule is literally get up, get ready for work, go to work on my lunch, do my Japanese studies, work when I get off lunch, work until I'm done, drive home, get ready for bed, work on Liver Leaf, go to bed, wake up, work on Liver Leaf, or get ready for work and repeat.
Jesus,
And
even I've had some time for a little bit of Kamen Rider.
No. For me, it's like zilch, not a zippo. I am booked.
Disappointing.
Yeah, I know. I'm doing a stream next week for when this episode goes live. It'll be last week. So I gotta watch a movie. No, I don't actually. I'm talking about Godzilla Kong. I can't watch that again. So probably next week, which we're not recording, so it's not like you'll hear anything as of right now. Like there's zero plans to like watch any tokusatsu because it's basically work on Liver Leaf and work on my short film and sleep and wake up and work. My life is work right now.
Damn.
But
Sounds
Rex,
exhausting.
surely, yeah, it's extremely exhausting. Rex, what tokusatsu have you watched this week?
Well, as I implied, I've been watching a little bit of Kamen Rider. Namely, I watched the Kamen Rider Geats Yamato Awakening movie, which is like a V Cinema movie released a little bit after the show finished.
Mm-hmm.
And I also watched a like little bonus special Geats Extra Kamen Rider Geyser, which is just focused on like a specific character from the show. And yeah, they were all right. Kamen Rider movies don't tend to do a whole lot for me when compared to their shows, but they usually do end up being. It does usually end up being nice seeing the cast come back. So like in the movie, it was yeah. I really like the Geats cast, so I was happy to see pretty much most of the main cast appear in that movie.
Interesting.
But outside of a little bit of Geats, I really haven't watched much of anything else, I'm afraid.
So you can't really talk too much.
No. I did watch The Twilight Samurai starring Hiroyuki Sanada, but that's not really Toku, I suppose.
Yeah, and you talked about that last episode.
No, I did not. I talked about that with you in private.
Was it really?
Yes.
No, because I swear I said
I had not seen it last time we recorded.
Oh, so we just talked that you wanted to watch it. That's right.
I don't think so.
I swear we did. I'm not crazy.
No.
But there is a little bit of news that I do want to talk about. There's not a lot really to talk about, but there is just something to talk about. And that is, we do have official confirmation on Monarch Legacy of Monsters Season 2. Plus spin-offs.
Monarch Season 2, baby. Let's go.
So I think it's obvious that Season 2 will be a little more Kong-centric. Probably kind of what's going on Skull Island.
Maybe. I don't know. I hope not. I mean, we know Godzilla will be in it. That's
true. Because we got confirmation that Toho is co-producing it again, so Godzilla will be involved. But there's also the announcement of spin-offs, which is plural, so multiple. What my vote is automatically Kurt Russell exploring Axis Mundi.
Ooh. I mean, I would not be against any more Kurt Russell in the Monsterverse.
See, I feel like they kind of have to bring him back, right? Or maybe Season 2 will be focusing on we're going back to Axis Mundi to get Kurt Russell.
I mean, they definitely had his arc end in a way where they can certainly bring him back if they can get Kurt to sign on to Season 2. They've got a window to bring him back.
Which, I mean, he did win an award, at least one so far, and he seems to have A, enjoyed his time on it, and B, seems pretty happy with it. I wouldn't imagine they couldn't bring him back. I mean, that was one of the biggest selling points for the show. Apple clearly...
Him and Wyatt Russell, yeah.
Yeah, it's very obvious Apple needs to consider that, like, even if he wants a pay raise, they kind of marketed him as the face of the show.
He got top billing, yeah. So
yeah, I don't see why he wouldn't return. I would love to see maybe a spinoff of just the 50s characters, kind of jumping through time at certain situations. I'd love to see that.
I mean, they tagged Mari Yamamoto on the post announcing that season 2 is confirmed. So obviously she'll be coming back, which makes sense because they brought her into the present at the end.
Right. See, that's why
best character. One of the best characters in the show. Hell yeah.
That's why I'm pretty sure what they're going to end up doing is have season 2 be a plot of basically we're trying to get back to Access Mundi to get Kurt Russell back.
Maybe. I could definitely see that happening with how they had his arc go. I doubt they'd have that be the whole season though.
Well, maybe they could do something where
I feel like that'd be something either that'd be like maybe like the first half of a show, or it's not the main focus of the show and Kurt Russell just comes back around near the end, maybe.
Well, they could very clearly do like flashbacks to when he was in the Hollow Earth the first time and now.
I mean, that'd be Wyatt Russell though.
Right, but like they could have both of them again in the show doing that. Like flashbacks to both of them, and then the rest of the show is covering like Apex and them trying to get back to Access Mundi. Maybe they bring back our favorite character from GVK.
Oh, that'd be funny.
That would be kind of cool.
That'd be funny.
So I think they could talk about the development of the Heaves because they clearly had to understand the Hollow Earth to have the Heaves to go down there in the first place.
I mean, there's just I feel like there's just a lot of places the show can go now.
Yes,
where I don't know any specific angle that I would like. I'd like need it to go down. There's a lot of different areas it could explore.
Right, exactly.
In a lot of ways, I would be fine if it really didn't have a lot to do with the stuff from a lot of the movies, like mainly like the later movies, Godzilla vs. Kong, GXK. I'm fine if it really doesn't touch upon that too much outside of having Apex, obviously, because, set that up in season 1.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty excited either way, because I kind of miss having a Monarch episode every Friday.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but when they come back at the end of the show, they're post 2019, correct?
No. They come back in 2017.
So the storm is... Oh, that kind of brings...
It's just a random storm on Skull Island.
Oh, okay. So,
Because they were only in Access Mundi for 2 days, and like 1 day is 1 year in Access Mundi.
Okay. So, they have everything up and they could cover things up into King of the Monsters. They could,
yeah.
I feel like that's really kind of like the line, right? Because the whole thing about the show was kind of covering things between 2014 and 2019.
Right. I mean, if they really wanted to with Access Mundi, they could go to GXK.
Yeah, they very well could. Like, perhaps that's how they end up getting Kurt Russell into like the next MonsterVerse movie. That would sell, right?
Just have him stay like in Access Mundi for about 20 days. All right, Kurt, come on, Godzilla Kong 3.
They could do that.
We'll have you actually die for real this time, but you'll get tons of money. It's okay.
I feel like that would honestly do a disservice, though, to the show. Like,
I agree.
Literally making it just a
set up for the movies.
Yeah. Like,
yeah, I agree. I like that this show. It definitely it takes elements of 2014 and Skull Island, and has its connections to the other two films that were out at the time, but Monarch does generally stand on its own, which I like.
The big question
it does kind
is,
of create some weird continuity in the world building, but it's the MonsterVerse.
The big question is, are they going to continue counting Skull Island as canon or not?
The anime?
Yes.
It was barely even canon to begin with, my man.
I know.
Literally, its existence doesn't even make sense alongside Kong Skull Island.
Well, because if I remember correctly, that show basically retcons the prequel sequel comics. And yeah, so it's like it retcons the comic.
There's just a whole nother like native tribe or whatever in that show or something. I don't entirely remember.
I mean, I haven't watched it yet. That's the only Netflix series I have not.
Barely remember it, to be honest.
I still have to watch Ultraman Season 3, and I got to watch Skull Island. And then I will be up to date with the Netflix anime kaiju stuff.
Did you finish The Black?
Oh, no, I still have Season 2 and 3 of The Black.
There's only 2 seasons.
Oh, there is? Okay. So
Yeah.
I have Season 2 of The Black, Ultraman Season 3, and Skull Island. I've only finished Singular Point, Rebirth, and the anime trilogy, and then Ultraman Season 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Actually, did I watch? No, I did not watch Ultraman Season 3. The last episode of Ultraman was when they had an actual giant robot destroyer.
Yeah, King Joe.
Yeah. So, that was the last episode I watched.
Yeah.
So I need to watch all of that, admittedly. I'm hopeful that once I get back from G-Fest, I will have a little bit more spare time and I can start devoting a little bit more time to like actually relaxing and watching movies.
It might be a bit too early to say, who knows?
We'll see.
Knowing you.
So, yeah, knowing me. I mean, I got 15 episodes of Ultraman 80 I got to find a way to watch before May 1st.
Yeah.
Because we're supposed to start Tiga.
Yeah.
Which we've committed to. I can't walk back on it. I'm regretting my decisions in life.
I was wondering how long till you'd realize, oh, I'm going to struggle to get through Ultraman 80.
Yeah. I only got 15 episodes, but I don't got, I mean, maybe like on when I'm done with Liverleaf, I'll devote some time to this 80 stuff and knock it out in like 3 days, and then
we'll see.
Start working on the short film. I don't know, but
we'll see.
No, it's exciting. You know, Monarch continuing. I think that's the best thing the MonsterVerse has going for it.
It's the best entry in the MonsterVerse.
I disagree with that.
Well, you're allowed to be wrong. It's okay.
You're allowed to be wrong,
but I'm not.
But you are. So, you know, it is, I'm excited to see. I know isn't it either slated for a late 2024 or early 2025 release?
I mean, that was like the original idea for it, but I think it's more mid-late 2025, I think is the idea now. Because bear in mind, they haven't even started filming yet. So
right. And they've got VFX to do and all that, so yeah.
Yeah.
It probably won't happen until 2025 when we see it. As
sad as that makes me.
I mean, that might line up with the potential next MonsterVerse film too, because at this point it's going to be pretty obvious GK3 is going to happen, but they're going to need like 2 to 3 years to produce it. And so, you know, when you consider that, it'd be 2026, 2027. If Monarch Season 2 comes out end of 2025, just like Season 1, it would hype it up to 2026 with GK3.
I mean, hey, at least that gives us something to look forward to in 2025, I suppose.
Maybe. I mean, I think there's plenty of other things, but, you know.
Godzilla-wise.
Oh, yeah, Godzilla-wise, that's true. But with that being said, I feel like that's really, I mean, we do have a movie to cover.
Yeah.
And I,
Come on, there's only one left.
Rex, why don't you do the honors?
You don't want to do the honors for the final episode of Kawasaki Month?
I don't. I don't remember it.
Does Super Legend God Hikoza ring a bell to you?
Oh, yes, of course. But yes, we are covering our final Minoru Kawasaki film of all time so far, because nothing else has been released. Super.
Outside of Outer Man in on some streaming services.
Which is a technicality.
Yeah.
So, for now, this is it. This is our final Minoru Kawasaki film. So, will it stand up? Will it end up being the greatest film he's done? It's the most recent film he's done that we have covered. There's a plethora of other films he has done, but none of those are available, so we can't cover them. But I would love to see those happen. I would love to cover more.
I mean, we'd have if we had access to them all, we'd have enough Kawasaki films to cover to do this every year for the next 20 years.
Yeah. But before we talk about the movie, we do have some production info to talk about beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the Japanese title, gotta say it, Chouden Gatai Godo Hikoza, which was released August 19th, 2022, distributed by Extreme Film, and produced by Rivertop Productions, the company by Minoru Kawasaki. Rex, do you have any pre-production or production information?
So something I didn't actually know going into this film was that it was actually... So one of the main locations of this film, the main setting of the film is Kota Town in the Aichi prefecture. So I didn't realize, but this film was largely made to help bring public interest in Kota Town and kind of revive it after COVID had caused the Hikoza Festival, a yearly event that happens in July, to shut down 2 years in a row. So the Kota Town, the sector of commerce and industry, like a youth club, actually planned the production of a movie to revive interest in the town after coronavirus. Mm-hmm. And so they would eventually get Minoru Kawasaki involved because they knew of his his experience with special effects films, and they wanted to have robots and that sort of stuff in the story. So they figured that he would be really suited to the film.
Right.
So he was
now, talking about the Hikoza Festival, that was established in 1971, and it lasted for about 10 years. It was not known as the Hikoza Festival, but it was a yearly festival they did. But in 1988, at this point, the festival...
Oh, and even the executive producer of the film, Kazuaki Suzuki, is the vice president of the Kota Town Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
Right, and the festival, like you mentioned, it was established in 1971, which it lasted for about 10 years. It wasn't known as the Hikoza Festival at the time. It was just a yearly thing they were doing.
Right.
But after it ended a couple of years later in 1988, it was decided that they wanted to bring the historical figure Joe Hikozaman to the modern times. And for anybody, I didn't know who he was. He's also known as Tadanori Okubo, who was a samurai that protected the lords. He was also known as a Hatamoto, which was a high standard samurai at the time. He was born in 1560 in Kamiwada, Mikawa Prefecture, and he died February 29th, 1639, with his grave at Okazaki City. And he was a legendary warrior that fought in a lot of wars and was highly regarded, very high on the chain of command. He was very popular, and he's a very popular figure in that town because his bloodline still lives in Kota Town. By this point, they're 12 generations in. Mm-hmm. And so he was popular in the Sengoku period, which ranges from 1454 to 1573, which was in the Muromachi era, also known as the Ashikage era. And Hikoza Mon himself established a camp in Koda town. And that's kind of where the town began. So he kind of, in a roundabout way, he founded the town. And from there, things progressed and eventually was established, and his bloodline still lives there. So in 1989, a year after they kind of started to want to bring him into the modern era, it was decided that they would call it the Koda Hikoza Festival. And originally it was just a costume parade with some local businesses like celebrating it. But as the years have gone on, it's become a summer tradition. And now it brings over 30,000 visitors every year.
Mm-hmm.
And they really wanted to cheer people up. So with all of that, that was how Super Legend God Hikoza was basically born. They really were inspired by 1980s anime robot shows. That was one of their biggest inspirations, and you can clearly tell in the Hikoza costume and design, it's very much inspired by that stuff.
Oh, and even the the digital effects they use, like when Hikoza's like punching the villain of a film, very very anime-like in some of those effects.
Yes, yeah. So they filmed most of it in Koda City, but they also filmed it in Kamagoshi City a little bit, in Kota Prefecture, based off of the behind-the-scenes footage. And
Right.
filming started around
November, I believe.
Yes, November 2021, maybe early December. It kind of differentiates. It's in that time, last week of November, first week of December. And as it is with all of Kawasaki's films, it was a very quick shoot. Actually, all the actors were kind of surprised how quickly it was like, boom, we're done. Next. He basically gave them like one shot to do most of the film. They had one take to do it in.
Damn.
Now, there were some scenes where they would do multiple takes, but for the most part, it was just like, do it once, it works, next scene, et cetera, et cetera.
Damn.
There wasn't even an audition for any of the actors. They all just were cast and they did it.
Fair. But yeah. Do we want to get into the film itself, or?
I mean, we can. Did you have anything else you wanted to bring up?
No, not at the moment.
Okay. So yeah, we can jump right into this. So, of course we get our opening logos, which is a little different because normally we get like Tornado Films and all of these releases and whatnot, but now we're on to Extreme Film Distribution. A little modern. It's modern and all that.
Right.
And right off the bat, we're in an action scene.
Yeah, but we start off with some pretty bad day for night.
Yes, it's like they've just lowered the exposure.
Yeah, but then also, depending on the shot, the exposure will just completely change. So sometimes it's like way too dark, and it's like you can really only see like the highlights rather than like the actual highlights, rather than any like the mid or low colors. But then some shots there'll be like not a lot of contrast, so like you can see it, but it also kind of looks worse.
And like all of the effects particles, because there's a lot of like sparks and whatnot, are not blended. They're literally just on top. So they're all bright and like clearly just probably chroma keyed in, and the rest of it
I don't think they're chroma keyed. I think they're just done in After Effects, and there's like not been a lot of blending to make them really fit in, if that makes sense.
It would have worked better if they had done the footage, then the effects, then a adjustment layer over all of it, and then decrease. If you're going to do day for night, like that would be just better.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, with bright, like, flashy effects, that's not 100% going to work because of lighting and all that, but yeah.
But either way, it's not, like...
It definitely could have been done better. It definitely could have been done better, I agree.
Also, Did you hear Jaguar sound effects from Hikoza?
No.
I heard like the opening of like Jaguar's sound.
I didn't pick up on that. I did not pick up on that.
That's what it sounded like to me. I mean, it could have just been a generic mechanical sound, but
Maybe.
to me, it was like, that sounds a lot like Jaguar.
I must have missed that. But yeah, for some context, this is a fight 400 years ago in the Mikawa province where the god Hikoza is fighting Shachi Hokon, which is our kaiju of the movie.
This is not a kaiju movie. I'm just going to clarify that now. This is a kaijin. Like, there's very clearly kaijin. They outright
literally
say
say kaijin. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a kaijin movie. If you're going in expecting a giant monster, you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah. You're going to realize you're going to think this is Redman in terms of scale.
Yeah. But for me, like, I know some people are like genuinely surprised that it's not a kaiju movie, but I mean, if you were to look at all of the marketing outside of the DVD cover, it's very clearly all human size.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know where. Maybe it's the marketing on like SRS Cinema's side, where they didn't market it as much of a tokusatsu movie as they should have.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you're just going based off of the context of anything can be a kaiju. It's just not a daikaiju.
See, I just knew going in that it wasn't a giant monster because someone had already told me that. Probably you.
Probably. So, I mean, for anybody who doesn't know, like, there you go. It's not a kaiju movie. For me, that didn't like impact.
I don't
my
mind.
opinion.
I watch like Kamen Rider and stuff like that. I'm used to this. you
Right.
know, I don't care.
Now, speaking
If
of
anything,
Kamen Rider,
that might be a good sign for most Kawasaki movies.
now, speaking for Kamen Rider, in this fight, we do get a little bit of exposition with the context of Hikoza is looking to entrap our villain monster for eternity.
Yeah.
And
The villain monster also says, I'm just built different. There's some fun dialogue in the subtitles.
the subtitles, like, there's one scene where they didn't subtitle it, period. And then there's other lines where it's like...
a couple, like, misspellings as well that I noticed of, like, Hikozaimon. I swear they forgot the H and I for a couple times.
This is definitely not the best subtitle work from an SRS Cinema release.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there's sometimes misspellings. There's scenes that are missing dialogue. And there's also, I'm pretty sure, just some straight up mistranslations.
Yeah, I kind of did get that vibe at a couple points. Honestly, there were some moments where I'm like, I don't even know what's going on anymore with some of the characters until a bit later in the film.
Yeah, I mean, we'll dive into that more because I definitely have notes on all that. So, what ends up happening in this fight sequence is Hikoza separates and uses his arms and legs to lock our villain away.
Yeah.
And then he turns into this little statue and falls to the ground. And then we get our opening, which is very much, I mean, it kind of reminds me of the Rug Cop. It's definitely inspired by, like, television shows.
It's
from
a
the
classic,
70s.
like, Kamen Rider Tokusatsu theme song.
Now, I really like the songs in these films. I thought this was a bopper. I enjoy it a lot.
This ain't a bad song.
It's on par with the Rug Cop's theme, I would say.
I actually quite like the Rug Cop's theme. I don't know if this one quite hits the same spot as that one for me.
I'd say it's about on par.
It's not bad.
And so we get this opening, which is about, it feels like it's about 2 minutes of this music in our credits with literally every
spoilers for the rest of the film.
Literally, like, everything is in this opening. It's not like the Rug Cop where they have footage they shoot for the opening. This is straight up just, hey, we're going to reuse footage from the rest of this movie.
Hey, here's a compilation of all the best moments.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it kind of ruins the rest of the film because there's not really anything too exciting. But I think one of the biggest issues that this film has just in general is there's a lack of how would you say it? A lack of substance. And I think it blows its load right here because you get the best of. Like everything that in this movie that's decent, you get in this opening. And you get the plot and everything. After this, it's basically pointless.
Yeah, there isn't a huge lot to this film. It's not like Monster X Strikes Back or World Things Except Japan, where there's a lot of political satire in that. Like those are very politically active films. There's not a terrible lot going in this by comparison.
Right, and we've already kind of touched on why, which I'm going to come back to later when it becomes very obvious. Continuing on in the film here, right after this, we get introduced to one of our main characters.
Yeah, Yuria Otanashi.
Which she is walking up to the UISAS, which is the Ultra Institute of Space and Science.
Space and Astral Science.
Space and Astral Science. So this world's version of the Science Patrol. Yeah. And I took the clue that the U for Ultra is supposed to be a direct reference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I will say, I do like how they use their Science Patrol here. I think it's cool. Yeah. And I think it's interesting. I mean, it falls in line with kind of some of the 70s Ultraman concepts of following the Science Patrol and giving all of their characters, like, character.
Right. And I mean, the next person we're introduced in the movie is an Ultraman actor.
This is true.
Ray from Mega Monster Battle.
Now, when he shows up, obviously this is explained later, he interacts with our other character, and our other character just stutters for the next, 2 minutes. Which, it's kind of supposed to be a joke and hinting towards things later on in the film. Yeah. But it definitely goes on way too long.
Yeah.
Especially because
it didn't bug me too much, but yeah, I guess.
There's a lot of there's a lot of moments in this film where I'm just like, okay.
Oh, there's definitely one sequence that definitely goes on too long, but
we're going to talk about that because I think we talk about it every time we cover a Kawasaki film.
Oh, I don't know if you're thinking of the same sequence as I am, but we'll see.
Oh, then maybe we'll have two conversations.
Because I'm not quite sure what you're referring to there, but we'll see.
We'll see. But no, she stutters, and this is kind of our entry to learning about our two hosts for our Hikoza, who
yeah. I mean, we're basically introduced to the entire main cast here.
Right.
We're introduced to the doctor that runs the place, who gets the least amount of character out of this group. His name is Dr. Tokugawa. You've got Yoshiki, who is played by the Mega Monster Battle actor and is the one that first meets Yuria. And then you've got our two leads, our male lead, Okubo, and our female lead, Kakao.
And I will say this, I think one of the film's strongest aspects is the back and forth between all of these characters.
Mm-hmm.
Even though, the Doctor doesn't get a ton of screen time, he has probably my favorite line and favorite moment in this film. And everybody else seems to have a good back and forth with each other, a good chemistry, which is kind of surprising for a film where they literally didn't do any, auditions. They were just cast and given the script and said, one take. So I will give the film props for that.
Yeah, the two leads in particular, they're kind of the ones you need to have that chemistry for. Yes. And I'd say they're decent.
I agree. So right after we're introduced to them, we're introduced to the other character.
It's the return of Detective Big Dick.
It is. And he's still got the haircut.
I know. I didn't even realize it was the same actor from Rug Cop until like halfway through. The first thing, all I noted down for him was that haircut.
Yeah, I put this dude's haircut, period.
Like, I didn't realize it was Detective Big Dick until like halfway through the movie, where I'm like, oh, wait a minute.
Now, we know nothing about his character. Like, he literally is just walking.
He just shows up to get possessed by the villain.
And then, like, and that's just him for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Like, literally, like, he was on set for 2 days, and that's all he did. And then when he was no longer needed, they literally just knocked him out of frame, and that was it.
Yeah.
And it's really funny. And, like, as soon as he gets possessed, they pull a Toei and, like, have the red light underneath up on his face, and they've, like, painted the dark mascara under his eyes, which is so Toei. It is such a Toei move, which I like that. There are some nice little homages and kind of callbacks to your classic Tokusatsu television shows in here, which works when you're doing low budget. That always works.
Yeah.
But as soon as we get through with this, I will say one thing that kind of there's two things that kind of throw the low budget thing off, and one of them is the film equipment. This is easily his cleanest film he's shot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I talked about with Kaiju Mono as well. I talked about how, that film looked very clean, very modern, very up to date, almost not low budget. This is the same way. It's shot in HD. However, they've also done a thing where, like, they turned the contrast up.
See, I think the main issue I had with the actual, like, look of the film visually was that the, like, shot to shot, the lighting can just the exposure can just completely change. Like, there's a lot of shots, especially in the main like science patrol type building, like their headquarters, where it's just there's a lot of shots that are really overexposed.
Yes,
and it stands out when you've also got these other shots that are happening right after that's like cutting between that look fine. But then you've just got these really, really overexposed shots where the background is just so bright white.
Right. And that's actually a perfect segue, because after this we go back and we get the introduction to the entire 3 rooms we get in this laboratory, which was shot in an actual scientific laboratory. It was shot there.
Yeah.
And it is so distracting. I imagine what ended up happening is, and this is just kind of a guess on my end, when they were filming inside, they didn't change their white balance.
Yeah.
Let's see, that would probably be a luminescent, because they're LED white lights. So on cameras, you can typically change it to be a luminescent white balance, which kind of counteracts that brightness that happens when you have LED lights on cameras, on that camera lens, to reduce that overexposure.
Mm-hmm.
And I bet they didn't turn that off or change it. And so when they had the final product, they had this overexposed thing. And so all they could really do to not make it look awful is, like, enhance the contrast and give the colors a more dynamic look, which just ends up making the whole thing look wonky.
Yeah.
And it's kind of jarring, because you do get these, like, really, like, this is it's a very nice set. It looks like an actual scientific laboratory, because it is. And then throughout the rest of the film, any of the other sets we have that aren't on location are 9 times out of 10 just green screen. And so throughout the film, like, not only do you have that contrast and jarring, like,
I don't remember there being too much green screen outside of one sequence near the end.
The most of the end was outside of the fights. Most of the end was shot on green screen.
Like, there's that bit when they're in, like, that blue background area where that's obviously a green screen, but I don't remember too much else outside of that.
Well, there's a couple times where they're, like, they're supposed to be, like, on set for stuff, or, like, on a stage, and they're green screened.
I might just be blanking, honest. I might just be
a lot of it's in the last like 20 minutes of the movie. I will say that.
Okay.
But throughout the film, there's just different changes to how they're filming that
and there
just
is a lot of like little visual mistakes in this that I feel like you could easily fix, and the film would look. It would bother me a lot less.
Is there anything?
So namely, like the digital shakes they have for certain shots.
Oh,
so, like for people who haven't seen the film, in certain scenes when our two leads have transformed into a form of Hikoza, you kind of get to see into their perspective, kind of like the Ultra Space from Ultraman, if you've seen various modern Ultra shows. And sometimes there's a lot of like digital shakes in that.
Or digital circles, Yeah.
Right. Like that whole environment is digital, but there's like digital shakes to, add like intensity to the scene and stuff like that.
Right.
But like you can see the edges of the shape, and it's like, I know how you can fix that mistake, and it just bugs me. It bugs me when I see that every time. And near the end, when there's a ton of blue screen in this one sequence, you can very clearly see that Yoshiki, the character, his arm is very clearly at the edge of the green screen, so part of his arm will just disappear. And it's just like a solid edge.
It's also clear that they weren't always together.
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, he looks over Otanashi.
Oh, like, yeah. During that scene, none of except maybe Okubo and Takao, I don't quite remember.
I would imagine. I think those two, because they directly interact with each other.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they do interact with each other. But but the other two are just on their own.
Mm-hmm. It is such a. There's a lot of moments in this film where it's like, this doesn't look right. There's clear, like, for us especially, it's like, okay, this was obviously edited in Adobe Premiere Pro. Like, you can see.
Yeah, and you can tell that a lot of the digital effects are done in Adobe After Effects as well.
Yes. And there's just so many, like, moments. And it's so jarring. And, between the places they're filming and the cameras and how they're used and what effects they're using and how they're, like, editing everything, it feels very rushed.
Yeah. Like, I'm not terribly mad at a super low budget film having these issues. My issue is more that is things like the shake, and you could very easily fix that. Like, okay, I know Kawasaki likes to shoot quickly, but please, just do another take of Yoshiki and move the camera a little bit so that he's not just going to be clipping out.
Okay, but here's my thing to your statement. I'm with you, but the thing about that is we have yet to complain about any of that on legitimately any other Kawasaki film.
I mean, I think we did. I remember some of these issues appearing in Monster Seafood Wars.
Yeah, okay.
So with the green screen, I definitely remember like the green screen, like for like I think it was the monsters.
Yes,
like some of their
the
body
ending
parts
when
like
they're
going out of frame. So it very clearly was just abruptly cutting off when it was composited into certain scenes. I remember that film pretty distinctly talking about it.
But even then, that's only 2 of his films that we've covered in Rex. This is our 8th film. That's a 4th. That's only 25% of his filmography, where we're like, oh, the post on this is not good. That says something. And I think it also says something else, that we're talking about a movie from 2020 and a movie from 2022. Like his films from 2020 onward. So I'm going to throw that into there too, that like that's something that I'm going to bring up later on as well. But before we go too far off, because I mean, all this will come back as we keep going. After we get our little introduction to the laboratory and everything, we also get a couple gags about the science stuff, which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah. Okubo also tries hitting on Yuria.
Again, this is the second time he's done it.
Yeah. And we also get introduced to our final main cast member, Ike, who's a man suffering from ALS.
Yes.
Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, which is a real issue. And actually, the reason this character exists in the film is because one of the members of the youth club that got this film off the ground had been bedridden for about 3 years prior to this film's release, and so this character is essentially based off this real person, down to the robot that he uses to communicate with the rest of the group.
Mm-hmm. Now, it's also important to note, so one of the big marketing things was the proceeds of this film partially would be donated to organizations that would help research and study ALS to help find a cure. That was one of the big pushes they had, was, hey, the profits for this are going to go to charity to help, end this. And for me, like, I remember the whole ALS Ice Bucket Challenge.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God, yeah. Oh, that's something I haven't thought about in years. Oh, my God.
Yeah, I'm
bringing back some memories there.
My brain automatically went there. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I remember that.
Oh my God. Oh, I didn't even think about that. Wow. God, that's a blast from the past. God, I remember filming one of those.
Stop saying that. You're making me feel old. I don't feel like that was that long ago.
But I'm not wrong.
Stop. Think about what
2014 was 10 years
Stop
ago, right?
Talking. We're done.
King of the Monsters
We're moving
5
on.
years old.
We're moving on back to the episode and the movie. The movie we're talking about.
Fine. Godzilla vs. Kong is 3 years old now. That's great.
We then go into our first little exposition on one of the MacGuffins that will be important later, as we learn about these telekinesis helmets that are supposed to help read emotions.
Telepathic. Isn't telekinesis like moving objects?
Oh yeah,
and telepathy is the brain.
Yes, telepathy
and communication.
But it's kind of weird how we don't what are these really for? I was confused.
I have no clue. I was just as confused as you.
Because at first,
some scenes it feels like that. I wish I wrote more specific notes on this, but it felt like some scenes later when they would talk about these things, it almost felt like they were meant to do a completely different thing from the way it sounded. Because I don't know if that's the translation or the actual film writing or what, but I was very confused on what exactly these were outside of some sort of telepathy thing that some way, shape, or form enhances brain power or reads it or something like that.
Right. At first, it seems like it's just a thing to help read and understand emotions. That's kind of how it's explained. But then they very clearly say that it's not meant to be used for this, but they have very little trouble. I mean, there's a little trouble, but then they just kind of gloss over what they do. Then they become the items to help transform, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense because they're supposed to do it themselves without needing anything. So
they don't actually need this,
but they're still using it.
I mean, it's just kind of like a thing that makes them a bit stronger, I guess.
But then, that kind of I don't understand.
It's kind of pointless.
It's pointless. Yeah. It's pointless. It's padding the runtime for no reason.
Yeah,
Because, like, my whole thing is, like, okay, if you're going to do the whole, like, transformation thing, so you are doing a team. So, okay, so when I think of team, I think Ultraman Ace, which had some influence on this production. I think Ultraman Ace...
Yeah, I mean, I definitely thought of Ultraman Ace with this having, for its main hero, it's two hosts later,
Right.
Four, but that was kind of the thing that set Ace apart from a lot of other Ultras until they changed it halfway through the show.
Right. And then I think like Pacific Rim.
Then, Pacific Rim as well.
And then also just Sentai in general.
Yeah, sure.
Now, my whole thing about that is like, traditionally, it's either one, they require the thing to transform, like in Ace's case, like they have to have the transformation devices to transform into Ultraman Ace, or they like combine using technology. It's not like, oh, you can do it either way, right? It's like you have to have this set of things to do it. And the way that this movie does it is like, okay, first they just need the totem pole. Great, we're perfect. They have their transformation device. But then they say, oh, now you need helmets too, which doesn't make sense. And then once you also...
I think it's like it's meant to make it easier for them to like do it.
Okay, but that's lame. Like
and it doesn't really end up serving much of a purpose introducing this outside of like using the helmets for like a conflict with one of the characters later in the film.
And then there's the whole other like problem of like, okay, why? So very clearly they don't need a host to transform the Hikoza 400 years ago, but now they need two to get to his base form, and then they need two more to become his ultimate form.
Right. And then also, one thing that struck me as odd is, so our main villain, Shachi Hokon, there's like two of him at the end of the film. Because I
always took it as...
you've got like Big Dick, and then you've got the Kaijin form.
See, I've always kind of viewed it as like so the villain can be at two places at once. Because I mean, we only see the purple power kind of energy thing, and then we see his full form come down. So perhaps that's like an extension of him. Which I mean, we've seen that in Bolton. Bolton kind of did that too.
It's not a big deal. I just thought it was a bit weird.
Fair. But speaking of our villain, before we get ahead of ourselves, as I think we very clearly, both of us are trying here to kind of jump to the end with all of this. We do get, after this whole exposition dump with these pointless MacGuffins of the helmet, we then jump to an aquarium that is a real place in Kota Town.
Yep.
Where we
get a lot of promotion for a lot of places in Kota Town.
Yeah.
And a lot of businesses.
So we first get introduced to the aquarium, and our villain walks up to a like petting tank, where we get a cameo by the guy who actually runs the aquarium. Anybody who, because I mean, as we said, this is all a marketing stunt for Kota Town. Anybody who helped provide a place to film was allowed to be in the movie. So this is the guy that like runs the aquarium, so he gets to be in the movie, and this is his scene.
And he gets to promote it by talking about how we have like over 500,000 visitors.
Right. And it's very clearly he's not really an actor, and he's just kind of there, kind of doing his thing. And then he pets this shark, and then he's straight up like, I like this, I'll be taking it with me. And he uses his power to create a kaijin named Zamechi.
Yeah.
He just runs off like there's nothing. Like the dude just stands there and is like, huh, that's Zamechi. Cool. It's like I was shocked how easy that was to happen and how melodramatic. Like nobody got it. Like everybody was fine.
No, that was funny though.
I just was like, what are we doing? Okay. And then, of course, the whole thing here is for the first 20 minutes, it's a just back and forth of what's our villain doing? What's our cast doing? So we jump back to our main cast at the headquarters.
Yeah. Our two female leads discuss gossip a little bit about they don't know what their job actually is all about exactly, and talk about how the Dr. Tokugawa is using his family's inheritance to fund all of this.
And then he appears out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I love that's a very Showa just play, and they have the sound effects. And then
it's just general comedic trope.
Yeah. And they give the Doctor a lot of these kind of funny moments, but as soon as we get this funny moment, he's
sending them to another tourist location.
Right, and so they go to this place, which this is a temple. But before they do this, there's a whole back and forth on who's going. And so initially he sends the two guys and the newbie, right?
Yeah.
But I just love how for the most there's this weird thing at the beginning of the film where they're determined to call Yoshiki assistant and nothing more. But then that whole shtick is dropped, pretty much once.
It was only the Doctor who was calling him that, really.
But then he doesn't do it again.
Yes, he does. He continues to call him assistant throughout the film.
But after he leaves, he says, no, Yoshiki, he says assistant, he corrects himself. And then for the rest of the film, he just refers to him as that.
I guess
I don't know
kept calling him assistant at a couple points and corrected himself a bit later near the end.
I could have swore he only corrected himself once.
Well, one of us is going crazy.
But either way, it's a weird character development moment for the Doctor that doesn't really make sense because we don't understand. We have no context for what's going on, and it just happens. But I love how he's just no, I'm not going. And the Doctor's okay, so you go, and you go. And then, they're I guess it's the newbie and our main actor. And then from there, our female lead actor's I'm going to go with him to keep an eye on him. And so they're all going. And then Yoshiki's I got to go now. And then they go. And then we get the funniest moment in this movie, which is where the Doctor says, UISAS, go.
After they've all left.
And he does this really dramatic, anime-esque, thing. And it's so funny. And he does it, I think he does it 3 times in the movie.
He does it again, yeah.
But it's really funny at this first moment. And this is probably the height of its comedy in this film. Because from here, it just is...
Yeah, the comedy didn't really land much for me in this film. I got a couple chuckles, but that's about it, really.
So then they go to this shrine, and as they're looking around, we get the exposition that our newbie's a huge archaeologist. And, our 2 main leads fight, and the guy gets pushed to the ground, and he's like, I landed on something. And he says there's something in the soil, but when we see what he's talking about, it's literally the transformation device for Hikoza, but it's just in this
on the ground.
It's a tiny pile of leaves that have been pushed aside, so it's very clear it's right there, and that's it.
Yeah,
it's they couldn't have been bothered to dig a half a foot deep hole and put this in and cover it up and dig it out. But at this moment, I kind of realized that this film is kind of banking because they go back and forth. They get taken to the other world where Hikoza's at, and he kind of talks to them about the lineage and how he's a distant relative of his, and how their duty is to find the villain of this story and defeat him once and for all. But this whole time, these two are like going back and forth, and I realize that this film's going to have a lot of that, and it's not funny as much as it's obnoxious.
Yeah,
like it goes on for so long, and most of the time it just feels like they have good chemistry. But the quarreling between the two is just so obnoxious and time consuming. It's like I'm done. Like.
Right.
A third of the way through their quarrels, every time I'm like, okay, can we move on? Like,
I mean, it's just kind of the cast of this movie kind of just feels all around childish.
Yes, very much so.
So, like by the end, it's literally, the ending is literally EK just telling them to please, for the love of God, sort out your differences, and that's how the climax happens, and they end up defeating the kaiju. Is they sort out their differences, combine together, and become God Hikoza. Mm-hmm. Spoilers.
Now, as soon as they have this exposition dump, so keep in mind, we just had the science exposition dump about 5-6 minutes later after the scene with our kaijin. We get this scene. And now we're into another exposition dump of what like Hikoza is, like what the main plan is. And then as soon as this is over, like they come back to the regular world, and the rest of our cast comes up, and they're like, "What's going on? Are you okay?" And then our kaijin appears, and they're freaking out because the kaijin's here, and they're like, "Give it the statue. That's what it's here for." And then, of course, there's a back and forth, and they decide on not giving it the statue. Then we get our first transformation.
And they're just a doll.
God combination. And it's, yeah. And our kaijin just kind of throws it around like a rag doll.
Yeah.
And then this is where we...
horrible green screen from, I guess, in the doll-like perspective.
Mm-hmm. Now, it's also important to note that the sequences here were the last things they shot. This was the last day of filming. So this was after a couple days of getting to know the script and the story. This was it. This was our final scene. And so, I mean, the kaijin kind of mops the floor because they're literally just a doll.
Yeah.
But eventually, like, they find a way to harness their power and reverse roll and come back and fight the kaijin.
Yeah.
Which correct me if I'm wrong, but they hit it once and it like injures it enough for it to retreat.
Yep, pretty much.
But during the scene, they say their final blow move in English, which is not the first time that Hikoza's final move isn't like he says it in English. And I don't understand this, but there's a joke of like, why is it in English? Like, why are they saying the final move in English?
I mean, I took it as a joke, at, like, pointing fun at how, like, in a lot of, like, Japanese media, especially, like, Super Robot media, or even, like, the Ultra series or Kamen Rider, a lot of the special moves, a lot of them tend to be, like, English words. Not all, but a lot of them, like, Rider Kick, Rider Punch, and all that. So I guess it's just a jab at that. Like, why are you guys speaking English? What is this?
I maybe, and like that's kind of why I wrote it down, was because I was kind of hoping you could throw something there. I don't know if that was a joke. It didn't really land.
Yeah, I don't think it lands, but that's essentially what it is getting at.
And then, of course, this is where we get the like I said, this is the debrief where we find out that they're specially they have a special connection that makes them able to transform into Hikoza. So it's kind of Pacific Rim rules here. But then at the end of the movie, that doesn't matter. It's Pacific Rim Uprising rules now, where anybody can do it. You just got to wear a helmet.
Mm-hmm. Even though that wasn't necessary to begin with. But anyways.
And see, they're, like you said, it's not necessary because they're not wearing helmets. They can do it just fine. So after this, they go back to the lab.
And we get more exposition.
And more exposition. This is where the doctor gives the whole rundown of Hikozaman and space aliens and Super Legend God Hikoza, and how he's a robot that using telepathy, Hikozaman was able to control. And the voice in Hikoza is the remnants of his mind.
Yeah, something like that.
and we get a whole like Tokugawa explanation and how his descendants worked with Hikozaman and Hikoza, and they fought this really famous...
His ascendant.
Yes,
which is historically accurate. Tokugawa,
right.
Hikozaman was a vessel of Tokugawa, if I remember right.
Yeah. And then, there's the whole, and Hikoza's from space, which Denace cameo in the drawings, question mark?
Oh, was there?
I don't, it didn't look entirely like Denace, but I was like, maybe that's supposed to be kind of like Denace?
Are you talking about the aliens?
Yeah, the golden...
I don't think so.
Things.
I don't think so. Because that was actually one thing I forgot I was going to mention later on. I didn't spot any Den Ace or Kawasaki
cameos. Yeah.
Which is strange. And almost a little disappointing for his last film that we're covering.
I don't think it's strange. I really don't think it's strange. And I'll explain why at the end. And so, we get this whole exposition with aliens that create robots and aliens that come down that can control people, which would explain why you can have the actual embodiment of the villain and then another person, because they say like whenever he had his anger problems and like went to control other like areas, he would be controlled by the alien, and that's how it happened. So, I mean, in that way, they kind of explain why they both can be acting at the same time. It's just at the end, the movie does an awful job and makes it so the alien villain has no personality until he leaves the human host, which I think is just awful. I think that's an awful way to do it. Kind of sloppy there. And from here, the new quest is we have to find the 4 legs, the 2 legs and the 2 feet of Hikoza to rebuild him entirely. And then we get the next quest. Like, this movie feels like one of those point and click games where it's like, okay, so you're given this quest, you go do this. You complete this quest, you go do the next quest. You complete that, you do the next quest, and so on and so forth. Because now the doctor's like, the legs are in one of these locations, you all need to go look. And then they all go to those locations. We get more sightseeing and more, representative of Coda Town.
Yeah.
More advertisements.
How convenient that they wrote this part in.
And
it doesn't even end up amounting to anything.
No, like, it's pointless. Like, they find nothing. They find absolutely nothing. And then they go back and they're like, well, we don't know.
But we do get to show off some of the town's food.
Yeah. That's it. That's literally all this is here. It's just food. We get more back and forth between our 2 main characters because he's off eating food while he should be, looking for the arms and legs of this thing. And during all of this, after their failed attempts of locating it, they get word that the villain has appeared again at a local factory. And so the Kaijin is terrorizing this factory, and our members of UISAS go forth. And he once again says, UISAS, go. And our 2 leads show up. They before they can transform,
some guy in a model car shows up.
So it's a Lexus, first of all. Second of all, that's the guy that owns the factory.
Okay, I was wondering that based on what you said earlier.
Again, he just shows up and he gets hit and he's gone.
Yeah, he
dies. And then the car disappears out of nowhere. The car's gone. It's a big white Lexus. Like, you specifically cut to it pulling up, and then in the next shot, it's gone. God, I was like, what?
What's a continuity?
Continuity doesn't exist.
What's a script supervisor?
And I'm just like, why? Like, now I understood the scene after I did the research, but it's like, this scene has no meaning. There's a lot of scenes in this movie that just feel like there's no meaning. Now, once you put into the context of if you live in Coda Town and you're watching this, you're like, oh, there's Mr. XYZ. Oh,
Mr.
hey, I've been there.
Mr. Blah, blah, blah.
It's like, oh, cool. Like, I know these places. I know these people. This is really cool. But in terms of just a movie in general, like, without being there, without living there, all of that's just, why is it here?
Right.
Like, what's the point? But, he dies, and then they transform into the doll, and they're trying to figure out how to have arms and legs. And they miraculously do. Also, I forgot, we glossed over the part where back at the base, at the lab, they decide that they need to wear the helmets.
Yeah.
And we get
talked
the whole,
a little bit about that.
Yeah, and we get the whole, like, pointless explanation. This is where Yoshiki just, like, runs off. He's like, I'm done with this. Like, you're using my stuff for the wrong thing, and I'm not going to have it. So they're down one of their members.
And I hardly even understood why he was, like, actually, like, really mad at them for this.
Yeah. Like, they don't explain. None of this makes sense.
Like, I felt like I was missing something.
And then, like, he's miraculously at the factory watching from afar.
Yeah.
So, they transform using the helmets, and then I guess because they're wearing helmets, they can transform into Hikoza's base form. And during this scene, the doctor says, it's Super Legend God Hikoza. And me and my CinemaSins, nostalgia, I was like, roll credits. Like, oh, they said the title of the movie. They did the thing. Let's roll credits.
Hell, and speaking of Ultraman Ace references earlier, when Zamechi first appears in this sequence, the way he appears from like a red crack in the sky, just like the Yapu from Ultraman Ace.
And that's something that comes back in later, twice actually. And I was like, oh, that's definitely an Ultraman reference. I think that's.
I mean, it's pretty cool. I've always liked that entrance for the Yapu aliens.
Yeah, like they break through the world to come in. Like, that's just kind of a cool idea.
Yeah.
And so they end up, they're in this new form and they fight, and they end up killing the Kaijin, right? They kill it here?
Yeah.
So they kill the Kaijin. They celebrate because they think they've killed the ultimate enemy. Yoshiki walks away. Our villain sees this and starts to plan to go after him. And then we cut to the infamous Kawasaki news scenes.
Yep, where we get about 5 whole minutes of promotion for this movie's sponsors.
Literally, it's just sponsored, like, it's just ads. It's literally just advertisements for this place.
The first one I thought was, oh, cool. A cameo from the local hero group Koto Rangers. That's cool.
Yes.
And then I realized it was just advertisements for the sponsors. And then I'm like, wait a minute. Are these real businesses? And I'm like, oh.
They're real businesses.
Oh, this isn't meant to be funny. This movie's just one giant ad.
Mm-hmm. This was where the whole, this is literally just a paid promotion advertisement, all came flooding in.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder, like, what Daikaiju Bugon is, because that was made to promote the hotel, correct?
Maybe. I'm not terribly familiar with that one.
I'm pretty sure it was. So, like, I'm wondering if it's something very similar to this, because this is just one big advertisement for this town and this festival.
Right.
I loved, like you said, I like the Super Sentai Kota Rangers thing.
Right.
I didn't know that was a real
local
thing.
hero. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
but
local hero productions, look, they typically are kind of like this, given they're all usually meant to promote their town or promote some kind of like cause, like with the ALS thing. Like a lot of times, a lot of local heroes, from what I was reading, they'll be like promoting traffic safety for kids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I guess it's par for the course for that, but as someone who's not terribly well versed in that area of Tokusatsu, it was surprising, and I'm not really a huge fan of the movie turning into just advertisements.
Yeah. Now, like, if it was just that scene where he shows up with the local heroes, that's fine. I would have been fine with that. But it's the fact that
I'm fine with a couple local businesses like chipping in and getting some shout outs and all that. But it's just like the movie just stops for like 5 minutes just to promote like every sponsor. And it's like throughout the entire film, it's just promoting something. Like that scene earlier of them that pointless scene earlier of them trying to look for Hikoza's like body parts. He's just there so that they can show various locations, and that they can show like one of the restaurants and all the nice food it has. And then, yeah. Just one big advertisement.
And so, at this point, like I want to say we're about 35, 40 minutes into the film.
About 40-ish, yeah.
So we're over halfway done. This film is only 70 minutes long. We're past the halfway point. As of this point, you could have cut out probably 15 minutes worth of footage.
Yeah, probably.
Between the opening credits to the looking for the legs to this. So already, like, we mentioned in the last episode where in all of Kawasaki's films, you can kind of trim a little bit out. This is probably the worst, like, in terms of percentage-wise. You can probably cut, like, 25% of this film and make it run a lot better.
See, for me, I feel like it's a bit more egregious here because it literally just stops to just... Here's business. Go here.
And none of this really impacts the story after this. Like, it's relevant for about 10 minutes. Not even 10, like 4. Like 4 minutes it's relevant because the main actor is not there. And then he comes back and it's no longer important. Like,
I mean, it's a little important at the very start of the climax.
But you could cut out all of this and just have that scene happen.
Yeah. I agree. You don't need 5 minutes of advertising. I mean, the sponsors probably required it, but, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Now, real quick before, because I think we're about to jump out of this, in the sequence with the local heroes, one thing I cannot stand is the fact that the audio for that scene only, for just the local heroes, sounds like they recorded it off of a TV. Like they had the camera rolling and they recorded the audio from the screen. Everything else was in like HD crisp and clear. And the narration is crisp and clear.
It's not that it's recorded from a TV. It's that like, because like the villain and all that is like speaking through a microphone that's being played through the speakers at the event. It's recording, the audio is being recorded of what the speakers is playing. So that's why it sounds like that.
That makes sense. Because I was like, why would they do that? Like, it sounds so jarring.
Mm-hmm.
But that would explain it. That would explain it.
And I mean, they did do some actual, I think probably just for promotion for the film, I know they did a couple other stage performances for Kota Ranger that featured Hikoza.
Mm-hmm. Now, so we get Hikoza, with the Rangers, and then we get him at a bathtub and at all these different places, and then we get our lead actor at the local like tourist trap with all the food and whatnot, and we literally watch him like walk around with an idol.
Yep.
And just like literally, he's like, I can get points. This is like a 2-minute walk from the station. Like, oh, I can get money off if I buy so much. And so then we cut to back at the base. We have our newbie. She's literally reading an article about him doing this promo thing. And then they talk about this whole scene's kind of weird because they're talking about how like he's letting the fame get to his head, which would be an interesting concept if it wasn't dropped after this scene.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this film has a ton of ideas they're trying to do. You know, they've got the whole, like, Yoshiki moment where he's angry that they're using his technology for a different reason, but that's never elaborated further. They've got Okubo, who is over here letting fame get to his head, but then that's dropped. There's the whole part where Otonashi is ignoring Yoshiki, spoiler alert, later on, and his love for her. But that's like only brought up in the last 3 minutes of the actual film.
Mm-hmm.
And that just happens throughout all of this. And the doctor like has no relevance to anything. He's just there.
I will say it is mildly funny how they do show the doctor just selling out Hikoza.
Yeah. Because there is that whole scene where he's at like the
Nishio Bank.
Yeah, and he's like, because of
meeting
all of
with
this,
the executives.
Yeah, which that could have been a great subplot, like the doctor selling out. Like that could have been really cool. That would have been interesting. You know, there's a lot of routes they could have went with that, but they don't.
Yeah, and that's my big issue with this film is just the script. It's not there.
There's no, like, it honestly feels like there's no script.
Yeah,
it feels like they're just,
kind of does.
It's just like, okay, you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me
of first draft.
Yeah. But this also reminds me of like Gamera versus Zegra, where the whole reason they made the film was because SeaWorld like gave them a ton of money to promote SeaWorld and film at SeaWorld. So they like shot everything at SeaWorld to promote it.
Right.
And we end up getting this empty film that feels kind of pointless.
Mm-hmm.
And rather crazy stupid at points.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, we get here. So we get all of this, and then we get their little talk about Okubo selling out. And then suddenly, like, out of the blue, like, Otonashi, like, just flips a switch and is like, how dare you, like, not acknowledge what is going on with Yoshiki.
Yeah, it's just all this, the conflict between these characters just comes out of nowhere, and it's like, it always feels like you're completely missing, just like a whole page of the script has just been omitted.
Right. And so she like storms off, she runs into Okubo at the door, and she gets angry at him because he's coming back.
He also has no clue what she's on about.
No. And then like she runs off, she ends up meeting up with Yoshiki and they walk off.
Yeah, who's under mind control by Shachi Hokon by now.
Which was established earlier on as he walked up on Yoshiki and was like, you know,
hey, you're mine now.
I've scouted for you, and yeah, and that's it. There's also this is a fun little gag where like Yoshiki and the guy under mind control do this little thing.
Oh,
with
they
their
just
tongue.
keep like flicking their tongue out.
Yeah. Which all the actors had fun doing that on set. But then like Okubo and the actress, they like fight because she blames Okubo for making Otonashi angry, but she was angry before Okubo even like got there. And it's like whatever, okay. And then from there, I'm pretty sure, don't we go to the doctor talking with the two about going to this stage show?
Yeah. They're supposed to appear at a stage show, but they're not really, since they're both like mad at each other and worried about Otonashi, they can't even transform at the stage show.
Right. Which, again, doesn't make sense. They're wearing the helmets. Like, what is the logic?
I think it makes sense. They have to kind of like they kind of have to be in the right headspace to transform.
But they have the helmets.
The helmet just makes it a bit easier. I don't if they're not like on the same like page, then I got the impression that they wouldn't be able to transform with or without the helmets, which is what we see here.
That might explain it. So, like, they do this, like, they fail 3 times. And by the way, everybody here is from Kubo Town. Like, this is a whole, like, Kota Town. Yeah. It's all from Kota Town.
Yeah,
like,
of
they're
course.
all people, you know, this whole thing's, again, just marketing it. Like, one of the, like, lead people of the town gets attacked by the villain that just shows up again, runs in, and is here.
Yeah, this is our climax, by the way.
and we're an hour in, and this is an hour and 10-minute long movie, and there's 4 minutes of credits, roughly 3.5, 4 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 6 minutes left of this movie. We've hit our climax.
Well, there's like 15 minutes because he appears like 55 minutes in.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that sounds about right. But either way, like there's 4, so there's only 10 minutes left, roughly.
Yeah,
like, give or take a minute or two. And in this, we get the whole character arc for everybody and the defeat of our villain and the reveal of the final form of Hikoza. So you can kind of tell how quickly this moves through it. They transform, they fight, they clearly are losing. We get the reveal that Yoshiki and Otonashi are under the mind control and suddenly have helmets by the villain, and they're controlling... I don't understand why they have helmets. I don't understand.
I think the idea is that they're just like strengthening Shachi Hokon with those, but
why do they need helmets? And where did they get them? I mean, okay, Yoshiki probably built them. That probably would explain that. That's why he needed Yoshiki.
I guess he just has spares.
I guess. I don't know. And then our robot, who has been in the background the whole time, like, somehow has a connection to Hikoza and kind of understood that, like, something was about to happen at the stage show.
Oh, yeah.
And he tells... Yeah, and the doctor takes him along, and he's like, turn this button, and I can, like, communicate with everybody wearing the headgear. So then we go into the other world.
So then he just becomes, like, a teacher telling off the students. in like a primary school.
Yeah, and the whole problem, like the final core problem, is Otonashi likes Yoshiki, but Yoshiki likes our other main character, the female host, Takao. But she and Okubo have a thing, but also not really, but also they do. And it's just this convoluted love triangle that, when you think about it, wouldn't work in the workspace.
No.
Like, but they're also all so selfish. Like, at the end of the day, all these characters are just kind of awful. Like, one of them's really stupid. One of them's really, like, ignorant. The other one's really moody. And the other person just doesn't like anybody. And then you've got the professor and the robot. And the robot's the teacher and the professor's the dude that's the catalyst for everything. He's the problem. But also in this moment, I kind of realized and this is something I don't normally throw out there, but it took me this long to realize it, but the costume design of this movie is probably the worst costume design I've seen in a movie. Like, at some points...
Oh, yeah. Like, I definitely noticed, like, I thought it was really weird how half the time it looked like half these characters were just wearing their pajamas.
Yes, they and like even in the final scenes, they look like they're wearing pajamas. So not only do we get this love triangle at the very end, we have this horrible costume design. We have this green screen scene where the robot and Hikoza are like above telling all four of these people what they need to do. And then like throughout the rest of this final sequence, like the whole time they're on stage, the whole time they transform to the Super Legend God Hikoza, like this is all green screen. Like 90% of this final fight is just green screen. And they have like 5 minutes left of this movie. And then after they all come to terms with loving each other or something, they are broken from the mind control and they become a Super Sentai team. And they all team up and they all transform into the ultimate Super Legend God Hikoza and fights the villain and kills him within like 2 minutes because that's all the time they have.
Yeah.
And we've already talked about how kind of weird it is that like the helmets are needed and now everybody can transform into Hikoza and like none of it makes sense and everybody's just happy in the end is like them all happy with each other and they're all dating or something and it's
they get together, blah blah blah.
Now I will say some of the actors expressed interest in doing a sequel.
Yeah, and there is a little sequel tease at the end.
Yeah.
Where the Hikoza doll, it was said that like Hikozamon's like life energy or something was used up in the final battle, but then in like the last scene of the movie, the doll like its eyes flash briefly.
And at this point it's in a museum.
Yeah.
And then we get our credits, which is 4 minutes. And that's the movie. That's the movie.
Yeah. I mean, some of the suit designs are cool.
Yeah, I think all of our kaijin and our mech...
they look all right.
Mech. They look all right. They're not like the greatest thing on Earth, but they're not bad.
But they look fine.
They're visually pleasing to see. But this film is just so empty. Like, it's literally just one big advertisement. It doesn't even feel like a film. I genuinely feel like this is a movie that Kawasaki just, like, I mean, we know that he was asked to do this. He didn't come up with any of this. This was kind of something given to him. And then he produced and co-wrote and directed it. But it honestly feels like this was a production committee film.
Yeah.
Like, this doesn't even feel like a Kawasaki movie.
Mm.
And, you know, the film is riddled with really small, stupid gags that result in just awkward moments that just, it feels so undercooked. This film just feels so lacking in anything. There is not one thing in this film that I think is actually properly developed outside of the theme song.
Right.
There's no substance with any of our characters throughout the entire film. The one funny moment is from the doctor who has like 3 minutes screen time maybe. And he's just kind of there to be exposition and to push our characters to go to different locations.
Mm-hmm.
And honest, like the first time we kind of skipped over the whole, like, what's your history with this film? But for me, I got this movie when SRS released it. And the first time I tried to watch it, like, it took me a week because I kept falling asleep.
Damn.
This is his most forgettable film.
Yeah. Yeah, this film's just kind of nothing but it's not offensively bad. Like,
yes,
I found it more entertaining than some of his other films that we'll talk about in the ranking. Like, I'm not offended by this film's existence or anything. It's just, yeah, kind of ending Kawasaki Month on a whimper, you could say.
Oh yeah, I agree wholeheartly. I think the only thing that keeps this film from being ungodly, like unbearable, is the fact while yes, it still overstays its welcome by like 20 minutes. The film's runtime is 70 minutes.
Yeah, and it feels like everyone is having fun working on this. Like, I feel like if there's one thing I can compliment about all of Kawasaki's films, is they all do have this energy
mm-hmm.
where, like, it feels like everyone who's behind this film is just having fun
mm-hmm.
working on this. it feels like it's a very positive set environment. Like you get that vibe from all his films, I'd say.
I agree. And, that is the one thing it does. It has that trope, and it has the trope of the news thing. It does have some of those Kawasaki tropes, but for the most part, I really do feel like I would say this is easily the least, this is his most lifeless movie that I've seen.
It's not my least favorite, but I would say it left the least of an impression.
Mm-hmm. I think this is the worst example. Like, if anybody is listening, and this is like your first episode of our Kawasaki Month you've ever heard, or this is your first episode in general, this is not a good movie to start in terms of watching Kawasaki's filmography.
No.
And I would say if you're like wanting to either A, watch more Tokusatsu independent stuff, or B, wanting to watch Kawasaki films,
there's better places to start.
There's better places to start. Like, throw this somewhere in the middle where you're like, I got a couple hours before work and I just need to fill it. Like, watch this. Or like, if you really want to do what we've done here and leave it till the end, like, I mean, the only thing is you're going to be disappointed in your conclusion, because I'm really disappointed in this conclusion.
Yeah. The 70-minute runtime definitely, I think, is the thing that, and that passion is the thing that kind of saves me from hating it. Because, like, I wouldn't say I was ever quite bored by this film compared to, like, a couple of Kawasaki's other films. Like, some of them, I think, really overstayed their welcome. Kaiju Mono, in particular. Yeah. I mean, that's only, like, 20 minutes longer at most. But I felt that one kind of felt like a chore to get through for me.
Mm-hmm.
So at least, for what it's worth, this film does not have that issue.
Right. And
but, as we mentioned, it still very clearly does not need to be as long as it is for any reason other than, hey, go to Kota Town. We've got this and that.
Now, I got a couple things left to say, and then I'm kind of ready to...
Okay.
Do you want to do the cast and crew first, or do you want to do the ranking?
Cast and crew, feel free.
Okay, so before we do that, I got two more things.
Oh, I will say some of the music is all right. I like I forgot to mention this. I kind of like the very Jaws-inspired theme that they give for Shark Kaijin.
Yeah,
that was kind of neat. I almost forgot about that.
After the film came out, Minoru Kawasaki did express interest in remaking Toei's Superhero Baron 1 and Space Iron Man Kyodyne. Something interesting is, in recent years, Kawasaki's been kind of remaking stuff. He did Planet Prince 2021. He did Roboman. He did a Moonlight Mask remake. So he's been doing a lot of like remakes and reimaginings of classic, specifically Toei characters. So this kind of made him want to do more of those. And he also talked about one of the interesting things, and I would love to jump into this maybe on a later episode. Kawasaki talked about how combining heroes is a unique concept to Japan. It's exclusively a Japanese thing, because like in America, you have like the Suicide Squad and the Avengers, he directly mentions, but they don't combine to anything. They're their own entities. But in Japan, it's a team effort. It's something where they come together and they become one.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was kind of an interesting thing that he highlighted. But if you don't have anything else to say, I'll run through our cast and crew, and then we can wrap up on our rankings.
Our final ranking.
Yes. So our cast, we have Ren Yagami as Tado Okubo, who was in Tokyo Ghost Trip and Kamen Rider Drive. Sarah, who played Tako Isuhara. She doesn't have any other tokusatsu credits. This was actually her first film.
Right, but she is a formal girl band member.
Yes. Minami Shota, who plays Yoshiki, was in Ultra Galaxy, Mega Monster Battle, Den Ace House, various Ultraman stage plays and music, and Ultraman Zero the Chronicle. Kyoto Isuhara played Otonashi Yoriya. She doesn't have any tokusatsu credits either. Yoko Taniguchi, who I believe was one of the suit actors in this film, was in The Calamari Wrestler, Executive Koala, The World Sinks Except Japan, Kamen Rider Decade, the movie, All Riders vs. Dai Shocker, O's Den-O, All Riders, Let's Go Kamen Rider, Go Kaiger, Go Sager, Super Sentai, Great Battle, Tokumi Sentai Go Buster vs. Kaizoku Sentai Go Kaiger, the movie, Kamen Rider X Super Sentai Superhero Wars, Kamen Rider X Super Sentai X Space Sheriff Gavin Superhero Wars Z, Heisei Rider vs. Showa Rider, Kamen Rider Wars featuring Super Sentai, Kaiju Mono, Monster Seafood Wars, President Tanuki, Ultraman Nexus, Ultraman Z, Invasion, Garu Panda Z, Den Ace 2005, and Charge UFO Next Door. Tomoya Tsunikawa was in President Tanuki and Charge UFO Next Door. Charge UFO Next Door is actually Kawasaki's second most recent film, FYI. Mitsuhiro Sano, who played Dr. Tokugawa, was in Ultraman Ace, Great Zubat, Daitetsu Gen 17, Star Wolf, Kamen Rider Ryuki, Kamen Rider Decade, Den Ace Chaos, and Kamen Rider 71. Ijiri Okada, who played Sachi Hokono's henchman. He was in The Rug Cop, The World Sinks Except Japan, Space Sheriff Gavin, the movie, Tetsuo Detective Robotech, Garo Makai no Hana, Invasion Gar Pandan Z. For your crew, you have
Just
Minoru
letting you know, he does have that same haircut in Garo.
I love that. For your crew, you have Minoru Kawasaki as director, co-writer, and producer. And then you have Akihiro Kiwata as your co-writer, who worked on Planet Prince 2021 and Roboman. Judori Marshitaine, who was your producer. Ryo Nakamura as your composer, worked on Den Ace Chaos, which is Kawasaki's most recent film, which is literally just a clip show of all of the Den Ace stuff. And Kazuki Tezuki, who is your executive producer, also worked on Charge UFO Next Door. He's a huge fan of science fiction, and he's basically the one that got this film to happen. And with that, that's your cast and crew, which is very different from typical Yamazaki movies where it's like you have a huge cast of alumni actors, and I go on for 25 minutes about who was in what movies and all that.
Yeah, there weren't really any Toku cameos. The only notable Toku actors in this were the suit actors and Ray from Mega Monster Battle.
Yeah. But with that, we have one last thing to do on our last episode of Kawasaki Month, for the year, and as of currently, what we have planned.
Forever.
Hopefully, more of his films come out and we get enough where we can do another month and then we can continue on this list. But Rex, let's go ahead and jump into our final breakdown of Kawasaki's movies.
The final ranking. The final countdown.
So at your bottom, what do you have?
At number 8, Monster Seafood Wars.
So this is going to set mine. Basically, everybody, if you've listened to the show, you're going to know the rest of my ranking. At number 8, I have Super Legend God Hikoza.
Mm-hmm.
This is, like I said, it's easily the most forgettable movie. And all the other films, I can have stuff that I actually say, like, I thoroughly enjoyed and didn't just deal with, if that makes sense. What do you have at number 7?
Kaiju Mono.
I have Kaiju Mono at number 7 as well.
I see. And
I
then,
think this is where it's going to change.
What do you have at number 6?
I have Monster Seafood Wars.
I have Super Legend God Hikoza.
Makes sense. So here's my thing. So Kaiju Mono has at least some fun moments with the kaiju action. And this is honestly the only reason Monster Seafood Wars is up as high as it is Jumbo Chef. That's it. Like, that's the only reason that thing's as high as it is. Jumbo Chef is the greatest character that Kawasaki has ever created.
Oh my god.
I would buy an action figure of him in a heartbeat.
See, the only reason Hikoza is as high as it is because it just never felt like an absolute chore to watch, where I felt at certain points of especially Kaiju Mono, it was kind of a chore.
Right, and I think that's something we can agree that for me, the bottom three have the most stuff that probably could get cut out in terms of percentage-wise of their film, because Kaiju Mono has the whole middle part of the film. That is, him not wanting to be it's basically him doing what our main character in this film does, but for longer, right? Going on the whole press thing and getting all the girls and all that.
Yeah, and then getting outed as a weirdo or something. I don't remember.
Yeah. Like that whole section could be cut out of Kaiju Mono. But the thing that Kaiju Mono has is I think Kaiju Mono has more fun kaiju scenes. More fun monster scenes. And it actually has some cool cinematography in the film.
Yeah.
This film is very
and there's
bland.
A fun maybe female prisoner scorpion reference, I think. I don't even remember that well.
So it just comes down to the fact that Kaiju Mono, while not drastically better, has better memorable moments, and also just has some better stuff. It actually has some interesting depth and camera stuff.
See, what's
whereas
funny
Hikoza doesn't.
Is that usually during these episodes while we're recording, my opinions tend to stay pretty consistent, whereas yours tend to sometimes you change your ranking in the middle of us talking.
Yeah.
But that's actually happened for me, because honestly, Hikoza was at number 5 for me originally.
Really?
Yes. But after talking it over and kind of realize, and just thinking back to realize how much of the film was actually an advertisement, because it didn't even occur to me that certain scenes were just advertisement until we were actually talking about it. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. It wasn't just this 1 5-minute sequence. It was half the runtime.
Yeah.
So that just kind of took the movie down a whole notch for me.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of number 5, I put Executive Koala.
I'm with you there. And, for that one, I think the final fight in Executive Koala is another Kaijin-esque movie, right? It's all normal-sized characters and all that. The final fight of that is just more visually interesting to look at because of the Ultraman-inspired sequences.
See, as much as Executive Koala is just throwing shit at the wall and nothing sticks, as much as it does that, it's not a complete... It doesn't feel like a complete nothing burger like this does.
Yes, I agree. It actually has heart. There's a heart to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that all of Kawasaki's films have that Hikoza's missing, because it legitimately just feels like one giant commercial.
Like I said, I feel like I can feel passion in the making of it.
Yes.
But I don't feel any from the script itself.
Well, I feel passion, but I don't feel heart. It's obviously worked hard to get this film out, but it also just feels like his least thought. If we're ranking films by effort, this is easily the lowest effort film he did. It really feels like he was a work for hire. He just was hired to do this and he did it. Which I think comes back to the whole idea that he didn't even come up with this. He didn't... he adapted some of these. He took inspiration for a lot of these. He's remaking for a couple of these. But it was his thought process. He pulled his ideas together to create it. This was more of a, hey, we want a robot fighting a kaijin in our town, promoting our town, being comedy and not carrying a lot of baggage for COVID. Can you do this for us? Everything was basically there for him to work off of. And that's why I think the film feels the least like a Kawasaki film.
Yeah.
But speaking of adapting and kind of following a company in a way, what do you have for your number 4?
Well, fittingly for adaptations, I have The World Sinks Except Japan.
And see, I remember this is where we differentiate. I have Monster X Strikes Back Attack the G8 Summit.
And like I said last time, it's very funny how we've got these completely reversed.
Yeah.
But alas, at number 3, I have The Calamari Wrestler.
Which I do too.
And number 2, The Rug Cop.
Same here.
And I think we both know what our number 1s are.
Well, I think it is very interesting because we both like these respective movies for the same
exact same reason.
Which, I mean, I think that speaks volumes to kind of our tastes. My number 1, of course, is The World Sinks Except Japan, whereas
and
your number 1
Monster X Strikes Back Attack the G8 Summit.
Which, you know, while I think that Monster X drags on a little too long and has some more useless scenes, I respect the fact that you and I both have the same understanding for our respective top 1s, which is the idea that there's a deeper political context here.
Mm-hmm.
I think The World Sinks Except Japan has a better story, and it doesn't overstay its welcome nearly as much as Monster X Strikes Back.
See, does. I remember feeling a little bored in certain scenes of The World Sinks Except Japan, so that's what takes it down for me. Whereas Monster X Strikes Back, I felt the runtime, but I didn't feel bored by it at any point.
But I love that, you know, and for you
I definitely
specifically,
think it's funny.
Yeah. And for you specifically, I love the fact that finally one of Kawasaki's films that's a kaiju movie hits a high. I mean, for both of us, it's kind of high.
And it's got Beat Takeshi.
I
love Beat Takeshi.
Before this month, you and I had both said it's kind of surprising that his monster movies rank
tend to
so
be his
low.
worst films.
Yeah. Whereas Monster X Strikes...
I was pleasantly surprised that Monster X turned out to be my favorite.
Yeah, it turned out to be your
that
favorite.
Was kind of the only one I was like fairly familiar with before we started Kawasaki Month. Like I had a vague knowledge about World Sinks and a couple of the other films. I knew the names of them, and I'd seen like some images, but I didn't really know anything about them outside of Monster X.
But I do love the fact that Monster X, like it hit number 1 for you, and it's the top, like it's literally like right in the middle. It is the middle film for me. I think that speaks to that film. And, you know, one thing that I'm a little disappointed in is, as Kawasaki has, based off of the 8 films we've covered, now, like, his filmography is way more than 8 films. I want to say he's directed about 30 to 40. Because at this point, he's producing like 3 films a year. But I hate to say this, but if you look at our list, you and I both have his films from the last decade at the bottom.
Yeah.
And I hate to say this, but it kind of feels like Kawasaki, as he has continued to get older and adapt to the modern day way of filmmaking and the modern indie style of like using green screen for like people standing in front of green screen and all that.
Yeah.
The quality's dropped. They look more...
It definitely feels like his films peaked in the mid to late 2000s. Bear in mind, we are only using like a small sample of his films. Like, we don't have access to all his other post-2000s films or even pre-2000s films.
Right.
But based on what we've seen, that's kind of the vibe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's noticeable that like Hikoza and Monster Seafood Wars, they feel way, way smaller than the rest of the films too.
Yes.
So that isn't helping their case.
But I don't understand why. Like at this, here's the thing: Kawasaki.
I mean, in terms of like the editing and stuff like that, I feel like it's a case of like he can't, since the budget's so low. Presumably, Kawasaki just can't hire people who are like more experienced and more professional, I guess, in terms
But
of
here's
like,
the
editing.
This is the thing. Kawasaki has had at least 2 decades of being known as the absurd movie director to build up enough of a financial stability to, I mean, Rivertop is still in business. Like his company like has a substantial establishment by now. It's been established for almost, we're going about 20 to 25 years at this point, at least. I think
that doesn't necessarily mean that they can just that Kawasaki can just pull a bunch of money all willy-nilly.
But Super Legend God Hikoza was basically financed by a committee. Like he didn't have to, like, it literally, the town basically paid for it, right? Like it doesn't make sense that a director who's been in the industry and self-producing would lower, like his quality would go down. Like he's clearly got better equipment now, but his quality is going down. Now it doesn't feel like, oh, hey, he's producing movies. It feels like he's just doing these kind of almost backyard movies with good equipment. And I don't understand where that happened. I'd love to watch more of his movies from the 2010s to see why, like in Kaiju Mono. Kaiju Mono looked professional. Maybe it's because he had the most budget for that.
Yeah,
But,
I definitely feel that Kaiju Mono and Monster X Strikes Back, they look and feel the biggest of his films.
Mm-hmm. Now, Monster X, we know that had the backing of Shochiku to an extent.
Yeah.
So, like, that one, okay, you can kind of get behind that. But Kaiju Mono did not. That was all kind of in-house. A committee giving Kawasaki this money. But it looks great, right? So, I don't, like, I want to know how we went from Kaiju Mono to Monster Seafood Wars.
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I guess I just there's just not enough information online, really.
Mm-hmm. And we haven't seen enough to kind of see that
to get the full context. Yeah.
But that would be something great. I would love to see a company release his work between then and now.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen of like Earth Defense Widow, it looks like that's relatively on par with like Kaiju Mono. I mean, there's from what I know of it, it does show its low budget, but it does still have a more professional look compared to this film or Monster Seafood Wars.
That was the transition film between Monster X and Kaiju Mono, right? So it would make sense that it would still track in that this looks pretty semi-professional.
I guess, I mean, I'd argue from, bear in mind, having not seen Earth Defense Widow, but from what I know and the little bits I have seen of it, I think Monster X Strikes Back overall looks more professional than it, but it also probably had a bigger budget.
Yeah, and the whole Shochiku.
Bigger crew.
Yeah. But, like, I still think there's a clear that is still very clear of, like, okay, this is in the era where he had professional-looking films. And even his, like, pre-Monster X stuff still has a professional look to it. A bit, it's a low budget. It looks more like a TV movie. But it doesn't lack that professional look, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something happened after 2016. I don't know if it's a. I mean, it couldn't be a COVID thing because Monster Seafood War was made before COVID was the problem. So I don't understand where he lost that. I would love to learn.
I honestly think a big part of it is just, for whatever reason, he just kind of those films he was not able to secure as big of a budget for whatever reason.
Maybe.
I mean, this film, it wouldn't surprise me if it's largely just the sponsorship money.
Oh, I think that's entirely what finances. I wouldn't be surprised if Rivertop actually only put in like maybe 5% of the budget.
Maybe the budget towards the suits.
Yeah. And that's it. Like everything else was paid for or just given to them to film.
Right, yeah. No, I agree.
But no, with that, I think we've officially reached the end of Kawasaki Month.
Oh, kind of a shame we had to end on such a bittersweet note.
I agree. Before I transition us into our final segment of Kawasaki Month, is there anything else you want to say or you want to bring up or you want to talk about before we officially retire the Kawasaki Month label?
No, I think I've more or less just said my piece on a lot of this stuff. I mean, I'd like to see more of Kawasaki's stuff get a release. I think he's a very, he seems like he absolutely loves filmmaking, and he clearly loves Tokusatsu, Ultraman, Kaiju. The passion is there. I hope we see more of his films with just more well-written scripts, because that's really the thing that holds back a lot of these movies for me, is the scripts and the padding. Yeah, that too.
Now, there is one thing I want to ask you, because I realized when we started Kawasaki Month last year, you made it clear that you had not watched a single one of his movies. And that this was kind of your entry into him. Now, 8 movies later, I feel like you're pretty well, like, I think we've analyzed the style of Kawasaki, kind of what he does.
I've got a good idea what to expect from each film, I'd say.
So with that, Rex, what is your, as the Kawasaki newbie, who before this hadn't seen any of them, and for me, I had seen all of them. So this was a revisit for me. This was all new for you. Like, what was that like?
It was nice to sort of explore the more low budget side and independent side of Tokusatsu. It has its hits and misses, which doesn't surprise me. But I was pleasantly surprised by some of these films, like Monster X, The Rug Cop, and probably Calamari Wrestler as well, are films that I was pleasantly surprised to quite enjoy. And I do feel that, it's unfortunate that some of these films do kind of get overlooked. Monster X Strikes Back, World Sinks Except Japan, because they're low budget, because they're kind of stupid movies. They're not going to really... a lot of people aren't going to care for any of the stuff, any of the themes actually going on within the films, which is a shame. They won't get appreciated as much as they maybe should get, or at least not get acknowledged for it as much. What I liked about Kawasaki's films was probably the vibe I got from the set in watching them all. I think it's a big takeaway is just to have fun with making movies.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. At least, to say the least.
I feel like I've talked to death about all my thoughts, so it's kind of hard to just compile them all.
But no, I was really interested to see how you would take to Kawasaki's filmography. And
I've got a respect for Kawasaki as a director. It's just I don't love most of these films, unfortunately. Which is a shame, but it is what it is.
I think I can speak for both of us here when I say probably half of his movies are okay. A quarter of them are good to great, and then a quarter of them are meh to not good.
I mean, for me, it's like I don't like half of the bottom half, and then I think the rest are okay to pretty all right.
Okay. See, I think I'm a little more open to liking some of them than you are, which is interesting to say the least, because normally I'm the one that's more like, I hate everything, according to some people.
You do hate everything. You hate fun.
Yeah, according to certain people, who shall not be Marchand named, I hate everything, but I'm actually more akin to actually liking this stuff from Kawasaki than you are. So that's interesting to see. I'm not surprised by that, but it's interesting to see nonetheless. But with
for
that,
me, it's the scripts that hold a lot of these back for me.
And fair enough.
That's
That's script writing is easily one of the hardest things I think to accomplish in film. So
yeah,
I mean that's fair. That's very fair to kind of come to that conclusion. But speaking of conclusions, one thing that I have to say before I let you speak again is hello. I'm Elijah and I have a kaiju and tokusatsu problem. Joking aside, I am Elijah Thomas. I co-host the podcast, Kaiju Conversation, as you all know, but I'm also a part of the rotating hosts for Monsters with Attitude. You can check us out on YouTube, where we do monthly live streams talking kaiju entertainment. You can also head over to Facebook and join our Facebook group. It's a great place to talk to like-minded people. I'm also a writer. I've written for GodzillaMovies.com and in Kaiju Roman Magazine. Currently, I write for Kaiju United. My most recent article was about Kongsploitation, and my writing has also been featured in the book Giant Bug Cinema, a Monster Kid's Guide from Bear Manor Media, where I wrote about Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. Outside of writing and podcasting, I also have served as a consultant on the upcoming Titanic Creations officially licensed Yongri articulated figure. As of this episode going live, you should be able to pre-order that with all of its beautiful extras. There's a lot of stretch goals, and it's going to be a great figure. I highly recommend going to TitanicCreations.com and placing your pre-order. I've also had the privilege to produce bonus features for SRS Cinema. I've worked on Yuzo, The Biggest Battle in Tokyo. As of this recording, I will have developed materials for a movie called Liverleaf, and I will start my development on more of the Ninja Monsters, Jiron vs. Gora, on Blu-ray, and I have even acted as an audio commentator for Yuzo. You can order those Blu-rays on srscinema.com. I'm also a filmmaker and YouTuber. You can check out my stuff on my YouTube channel, ET13 Productions, where you can see some of my short films and older YouTube videos, along with the playlist that features all of my appearances on YouTube. I do plan on getting new content on that channel soon, so definitely check that out. I've also appeared in a kaiju movie, little-known film called Zillafoot from 2021. I made a brief cameo in the film as Skywatcher number 2. It's got a rating of 3.7 out of 10 on IMDb, so you know it's got to be peak cinema. If you want to watch more kaiju, you can buy the Blu-ray on srscinema.com or the DVD from any major online retailer, or just watch it for free on Tubi with ads, or buy it on Prime. You can also check out my action figure photography on my Instagram at ET13_productions, and my X, the artist formerly known as Twitter, thanks Danny, at the same handle. Now Rex, where can people find you at?
Well, dear listeners, you can find me on YouTube at Rexino, on Twitter at Rex_Xenomorph, and on Instagram, Rex_Xeno. And if you want to check out some of my writing, go take a look at the Tokusatsu Network.
And as for the podcast, don't forget to rate us on iTunes. That boosts our ratings and helps us get recommended to more people just like you. If you don't have an Apple device, which I don't blame you, I don't, that's actually a lie. I'm literally looking at a MacBook to read the script off to you and to do this podcast. But you can rate us on Spotify. To stay up to date with all things Kaiju Conversation related, head over to www.kaijuconversation.com to find all of our episodes, social media, news, and updates. Follow us on Twitter at KAIJU_CONVERS. If you don't have Twitter, you can follow us on Instagram or like us on Facebook. If you're like me before podcasting and you don't have any social media, lucky you. You can email us at kaijuconversation@gmail.com, all lowercase, all one word, you know the drill. And as always, we'll read your reviews on air for everyone to hear. We also have a Teespring store. Eventually, we'll have original artwork on there. But until then, you can sport our awesome logo on a t-shirt or maybe even a coffee mug. If you'd like to chat with us, check out our Discord server full of others that have similar interests to you. Most recently, in our General 1 chat, there was a conversation about... Well, what would you know? It looks like they were having a conversation about Godzilla vs. Kong. I hope it's about how awful it is, because everybody knows that Godzilla vs. Kong is awful.
Such a positive outlook.
I know, thank you. And you know what? Speaking of positivity, it's a great community full of great people. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you can be notified anytime we upload a video. We sometimes post exclusive to the channel like bloopers for episodes or minisodes talking about news or other subjects. We also have an interview with Mechagodzilla designer Jared Kurczewski on the channel. I definitely butchered that name. I'm so sorry.
Very much this time.
Yeah, more so than usual. But a huge thanks to Rex for editing all of these episodes and all the other content we upload. His links can be found in the description below. Along with Rex, we'd like to give a huge thanks and shout out to Danny DiManna of the Godzilla Novelization Project for his amazing vocals on our theme song. You can support him by following him on Twitter at Danzilla93_GNP or visit his website, GodzillaNovelizationProject.com. And a huge thanks to Grattan Conwell from the podcast Giant Monster BS for composing the music for our theme song. You can support him by following him on Twitter on the podcast account at Giant Monster BS or on any podcast platform under the name Giant Monster BS. And with that, we're going to wrap things up here. We're going to wrap up Kawasaki Month for the last time. So thank you guys so much for listening, tuning in to Kawasaki Month, following us through this journey. It's been a lot of fun, it's been interesting, and it's been very enlightening. So thank you guys so much. If you want to, let us know what your favorite Kawasaki film is. You know, feel free to message us on any of those platforms and say, my favorite Kawasaki film is this. We'd love to hear it, and we'd love to find out what the general consensus is for his best movie. So again, thank you guys so much for listening. And as always, please remember, life's too short to not talk big. Bye, guys!
Bye.
We are set, we are in debt, there's nothing to sweat. Life's too short now, baby. And not too big now, baby. Conversation. His name's Elijah, baby. And also Rex now, baby. We love those kaiju, baby. And you will too now.